Welcome back to Old Guy REI. It's time for our video to discuss the highlights of our last Wednesday accountability call. And again, Mikey's back with me. I was thinking this morning, Mikey, that I'm thankful that you're able to join me every week. I really look forward to doing these. I think last week's meeting was really good. We had a lot of good topics.
These are so fun. This is meeting number 20, went 3 hours, 45 minutes. Pretty much our average runtime is about 3 hours. So that's 60 hours of meetings from start of the school community. So it's it's growing pretty fast.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll be up to 100 in no time. And I know, like we said before, we were doing the Wednesday calls long before we jumped into the school community. So there's um there's a lot of hours there that and a lot of great information has been shared. This week, this past week, we talked a lot about property management, and I know you're a long distance investor like we are, and I would say about half the group is long distance, but um, so we talked about property management. There was one investor that shared a new property that they just acquired and what they're going to be doing with it. We talked about how I think the majority of the group felt like rents were softening right now, and a few people have vacant units that they'll be trying to rent. And not just the softening of the market, but the time of year as well. And I think you're going through something similar right now with one of your places too.
Yeah, I'm seeing softening of rents and also the time is not the best. So we're just hoping we have it listed. It's been listed for about a week now. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on it and I'll follow up with my manager on Monday.
Where did you have an idea of where you wanted rents to be set um, for that home? Because I know for us, we did all of our research. We checked Zillow, we did the FMR website. Um, I checked with our real estate agent there, and the numbers that we came back with were higher than what our property manager was recommending. How are you finding that to be in your case?
Same. I was looking, I would have liked maybe 1350 around that area, but we are seeing it much lower. So I'm just trying to brace myself for that and just trying to MacGyver as best as I can and then see how it actually comes out in the end. Yeah, and it is the softening of rents and the winter that's been trouble, especially for Pittsburgh. I know it gets colder during that time.
Yeah, and the ones I'm talking about are in St. Louis too. So winter's definitely winter in those areas. Um, One good thing I think that we discussed with our property manager, and he's okay with us trying the higher rents, and we'll see what that looks like after a week or two. One of the other people in the group mentioned shooting for the high numbers, and he actually got the higher rents. But one of the other people in the group thought maybe it was because he is the one actually showing his units, and his units are really nicely updated. Um, but but again, that investor was telling us you can't really lose by shooting for the better rents, and you might luck out and get them. And then we've heard different talk about what concessions you might offer if it doesn't work out. Maybe don't lower the rent right away, but offer some incentives like a longer lease for a lower rent or half month off the first month's rent, different things like that. So you're not to the point where you're going to offer concessions, but how long do you think you would hold it at the current rent before you thought about changing it?
I want to say 2 weeks and then maybe kind of reevaluate.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy in the beginning to see how many applications you get, things like that, what interest there is, and that'll tell you a lot. Um, One of the other people in the meeting that night was talking about how if she has a good tenant and that's going to have a lease renewal, right now she's thinking she might not even want to increase the rents, especially if the tenant is good. She put it like she didn't want to ruffle any feathers and take any chances on having a vacancy or a turnover. So I thought it was interesting. I think a lot of us are in the same spot. She also mentioned that uh, kind of transitioning over to property management issues, that her tenant tried to repair a leak under the sink and ended up breaking the sink. And she would have liked to be involved in that process, but the property manager just charged the repair to the tenant because they caused the issue. And now she's thinking that that tenant is upset because they're getting charged for the sink to be replaced. And she was saying she might have handled it differently. She might have actually paid for the sink just to keep on good terms with her tenant. What do you think about that? What would you have done in that case?
I just know from, Matt's live streams that he wouldn't want anyone to do work unless they're licensed in that or a skilled tradesman. And I agree with that logic, but that's the thing about real estate investing is we're going through all these different experiences, and a lot of the times there's going to be new ones. So we have to take that as a learning experience and then just change how we operate moving forward.
Yeah, I think that that investor would have just liked the option to talk with the tenant, and then she could have made a decision if they should be charged for it or not, or if they wanted to work it out some other way. But I think you're right. I think we don't want the tenants to think they can just start working on everything, that just because they don't want their rent to go up or something like that, thinking that's how the landlord would react. And then staying on the property management topic, a lot of us were thinking that in the beginning, when you're working with a new property management company, I always say we're trying to train our property managers to think about how we would handle a situation. And over the first couple of years here that we've been doing it, one of the biggest issues is not getting notified about anything until it's already done. Like in this case, they already charged the tenant for the sink. And as far as they were concerned, they did the right thing, and that's how it should be handled. But now she's going to go back to them and give them her feedback. And maybe the next time it would work out better for her because she educated her PM. That's been kind of the main theme over the last few weeks, is that, for example, the property manager has a reserve, say $200 or $300 that they set aside for small repairs, and they typically don't need to get your approval if the repair comes in under that amount. But you and I were just talking about how I would at least like to know, hey, the tenant put in a repair for, or excuse me, a request for a plumbing repair or something like that, because it is going to come out of the rent. And if you're expecting $1,000 to come in and you only get 800, you're going to wonder what happened. And then you have to go digging and find out what the issue was or why the 200 was taken out. And how do your property management companies handle that? Do they notify you when for every little thing, or is that something you would want?
Yes, communication I'm so big on. And even going through the meeting, there was things that were said that just resounded in my head where, one investor was saying he would want to visit his properties every year. That's something I really got to look at. And also, they said just starting out, one investor would prefer to self-manage from the beginning. That way, you can really get in tune with your property. And as you're passing it off, you've already experienced what managing is going to be like. So when you hand it off, you kind of have more knowledge so that when you're communicating with a manager, you've already been through all those experiences. So it makes it easier just kind of moving forward and operating that way.
Yeah, and I think it was also brought up kind of in the reverse of what you just said. For example, if you have properties under a property manager and you decide you want to manage yourself, what kind of information should you expect to be given to you,
Yeah.
to help you be successful, like, um, copies of leases, all of the maintenance requests that have been dealt with over, the last year or whatever it might be. Um, Obviously, you'll be getting copies of keys and things like that. And we also talked a little bit about what it takes to switch PMs. And sometimes, if you don't handle leaving the property management company professionally, they might drag their feet getting information to the new property manager or even to you if you're going to be the one taking it over. So there was a few good suggestions about how to handle that. The and then jumping back over to the rent thing, some of the people in the group had a lot more experience with Section 8 than I have, and they gave us some good tips. And they were thinking too about the rents and mentioned that maybe the property managers kind of have a pro forma of for their area, and it might be a little bit lower rent that's going to guarantee getting the unit filled, and it'll be a lower rent than maybe you could actually get, but they don't get paid if the unit's empty. So, they just want to get the place filled with a body, so they start getting some of that income as well. And two, on the Section 8 note, one thing that we also learned in Matt's lumberjack course in the boot camps is that he suggested that we get involved with the housing authority, give them a call, find out who's the representative that's working with your tenant. You can even get carbon copied on all the emails sent back and forth between Section 8 and your property manager, just so you're aware of what's going on, all the time. Not that you have to butt in every time, but it would be nice to know.
I didn't know CC meant carbon copy. That's learning for me. But the one thing you mentioned was the deposit. That really surprised me, that number for when you was talking with your housing authority, they can go past the deposit up to $3,000, which was really good information.
Yeah, and I think what you're mentioning is I was talking to our property manager and they were doing the exit walkthrough of the property after the tenant moved out. So and they have a deposit, whatever it might be, $1,000. And if the tenant causes more damage than that $1,000, then our property manager can put in a request to Section 8, and Section 8 will go $3,000 higher for repairs if they were caused by the tenant, and the PM can prove it. And the PMs can usually prove it. They do pictures before move in and things like that. So you can see obvious damage that way. But that was a pleasant surprise because it wouldn't take long for $1,000 to be burned up by, some repairs required by what the tenant did.
And that's just the value that the meetings provide, because there's that one investor who his wife is a property manager, and he just says no matter what, on that first of the month they got to have all the paperwork set up. They have no excuses. Every single landlord has to have that paperwork for them on the first of the month, and then just stuff going into the details of breaking down vouchers with supplemental and utility costs. As utilities costs gets raised, so can the supplemental, and there's negotiation processes with Section 8 and vouchers and supplemental. So that was great to hear.
Yeah, and I think, like they mentioned too, that the PMs don't give up any more information than they need to. So you have to dig. And that's why I think it's important to get involved and contact the housing authority, because all those little rules you wouldn't know about, or or things that are available to landlords that you're going to miss out on because you didn't take the time to check in with them. Um, Another thing that, as far as property management goes, if you have a tenant leaving, they were they were asking the group, how many of your property managers do like an exit survey and find out why the tenant is leaving? Is it just because they needed a bigger place or they weren't happy with you or the PM or whatever it might be? And I think that would be useful to help keep a tenant longer after that tenant moved out. And then some of the other suggestions or questions were, when you have a property that's being turned over, do you actually go in and look at the listing to see, how the photos are, if you would have set it up the same way? And again, going back to the lumberjacks boot camps, they are always talking about, if there's one photo that sets the place apart, put that photo first, highlight maybe the area, if there are attractions or positive things, it's close to a bus line or it's close to a train station or, big grocery stores or things like that that can help make your property stand out.
And that's the one good thing. I highly recommend Lumberjack Landlord's course and boot camp because in his course, he will kind of give you his ad description, how he writes things. And we've heard stories where Dion has reached out to Matt. Matt has kind of reviewed one of the ads being listed, and he's like, make this change, do this edit. And sure enough, once those edits have been made, the property has an influx of potential tenants. So that's one valuable piece of information that's worth paying for, in my opinion.
Yeah, we got a lot of value out of that course, and they he really digs deep into all aspects of owning a rental property and managing it. He manages, I guess, the majority of his units himself. I think he has a couple under property management. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, all of the information we learned in that course was super, super helpful.
Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Yeah, and one of the folks in the group every week was looking for a property management company in Jackson, Mississippi, and he said he found one this week, and it was through a referral. I can't remember how he found the property management company that he ended up choosing, but he'll be trying them out for a while. Hopefully, he'll have good luck.
And it was great to hear that one new investor was able to place a tenant. That was just great news because I know for the first one, it is the most difficult just because that's your only one and you feel like you're just bleeding money while it's vacant. But once you fill it, it's now the next step of the marathon that you got to go through with managing the manager, how that tenant is in that property, how that goes. So this is the next step. So good luck, and I'm sure he'll do really well.
Yeah, I know he was, I think, on his second month paying the mortgage himself without any income, rental income, and that is tough. We've been there too, but like you said, he's learned everything. He's learned a lot to this point, and now you get to continue the education and, like you said, figure out how your property manager is going to handle situations that come up, if the tenant's going to be really needy or not, things like that. So yeah, so I almost told him, now the real education begins, but
That's true.
and with it being his first, I think that it is a relief to get a unit filled. But like you and I talked about last time, the property manager is going to take half or all the first month's rent, so he's still not going to see money for a little while. So he's going to hang on a little bit longer.
Yeah, I am interested in his options because I know he was looking at different ways. Is maybe he'll have the tenant place, then after that, look at maybe moving to Hem Lane. I was kind of curious that follow-up, what if anything changed after they placed a tenant in kind of a good amount of time, just kind of seeing what his thought process is on that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he was considering taking on the management part himself. Um, but he was doing some homework and trying to build a team of contractors and things like that. So he'll be ready when he does make that transition. some of the people in the group were talking about insurances, and I think one of them in the Chicago market, their insurance had increased quite a bit, and we haven't seen that yet in St. Louis. But I could imagine it could happen, all around the country. We have another friend that was asking a question about a BRRRR that she's doing, and she wasn't sure if she should pull out all the money that she had available to her or leave some in there, because if she pulled it all back out, her positive cash flow would have been very little. And I think some people went back and forth with her on the options, and a few of them suggested that she leave the money in the deal to get the better cash flow for now, at least until she rebuilt reserves and things like that. Or if she had more properties and more reserves set aside, then maybe it made sense to pull it all out and go for the next deal. I think, you and I have shared that. I know I might have gone a little bit too fast this year, and it's been tough, but we're working through it. But moving forward, we'll know better, right? We'll be a little bit more cautious because it's no fun losing sleep at night.
I'm in the same boat. I went a little bit too fast too, and now just being patient, slow and steady. But I understand the urge to hunt. Nothing like hunting for the next deal. But yeah, it's a tough it's a tough back and forth in your mind.
Yeah, and it was fun to hear about. One of our friends is in Texas, and he had picked up a property, and he has some good questions because he has a contractor lined up, and in his situation, he hired the contractor by the day, and he was asking our thoughts on that. Um, and it turns out this contractor is just a one-man show, so he's going to be doing the whole project, from demo to completion. They're adding a bedroom and a bathroom and things like that. And hopefully, we'll share his channel soon too. Again, we'll check in with him for permission to mention that. Um, what do you think about that? If about hiring someone by the day?
I, it was interesting hearing just veteran contractors like you and also the other investor talk about how they kind of view it. And from what I understand is you guys don't normally see that anymore, that it's more of a rarity that it's by the day. But, this investor has had previous experiences with this contractor. So I can understand the reasoning why they would do it if so far it's been working out on the last work that was done, then why not continue it? But it's good just to keep on evaluating it and having questions because you never know. Maybe, as we talked about in other meetings, maybe it's great on one job, but the next job, something like a life event happens, they change. You never know what could happen. So it's good to reevaluate and just double check on things.
Yeah, and I mentioned that night too that I don't like to work like that myself. I would rather give a customer an estimate and let them know how long I think the project will take. Because if you work time and materials, the customer doesn't know how fast or slow you work. They don't know if you might drag your feet just to earn a few extra dollars a day, things like that. So, but it has kind of flipped on me sometimes. For example, when we bid flooring, it's by the foot, and typically it's between, depending how cut up the floor plan is, it can go $2 to $4 for labor. Um, and we've gotten pretty fast at it over the years, and we might install 400 or 500 feet in a day. And if you're charging $2 a foot, that's $1,000, and they're going to come back at you thinking, I paid you $1,000 for 8 hours of work. That seems way out of line. But that doesn't happen too often. But sometimes I need to try to explain to potential clients of how it's going to go, and they're always welcome to get other, other bids or have someone else do it if they're not happy with us. But that did come back on me one time, and I don't like that to happen.
Yep. And don't mention sharpening your pencil, not told by REI. That is a big no-no.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't like to hear that because that's, I don't know, that's just a warning sign for me just to get in the van and go home.
With how busy you are, it's not worth your time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting hearing the other contract talk where he's like, just don't be very strict about it, but do random pop-ins. But just have a smile on your face when you're doing it. And I thought that was great advice because, you don't have to be so, just so strict on things. You
Mhm.
could just pop in, say hello, hey, how's it going? Just with a smile, just to check up, random check-ins every now and then.
Yeah, and he even mentioned, maybe bringing lunch or bringing drinks or water or something just to pop over. And I think too, it would be important for him to talk with the contractor to see what his goals are for each day.
Mm,
So if one day, if he thinks demo is going to take 3 days, then at the end of the third day, pop in and say, "Oh yeah, how'd it go? Everything looks like it's working out well." Or because we also mentioned, demolition goes really quickly, so it looks like progress is being made really quickly. But when you start plumbing or you start electrical, if you like the other contractor mentioned, if you find dry rot and you have to start,
yeah.
doing a little bit of reframing and stuff like that, it won't look like very much got done. But some trades are more time consuming than others. Like tile work doesn't always go the fastest. But if you're painting, I mean, you could almost paint a whole house in a day. So we just cautioned him to keep those things in mind.
And I think that was eye-opening, just breaking it down by trade. Yeah, I didn't even think about that either. It's like electrical work, you're not really gonna see much of a difference, but
Mhm.
work has been done. But then when you go painting and demolition, it's like, yeah, it's night and day how it looks. So that was really good.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing too. Like I mentioned, prepping customers for that. I always try to tell them just that. When we're doing the demo, it's going to look like it's going really fast, and it will slow down once we get to you know, putting in the new systems and stuff like that. So try to prepare them as much as possible so they're not shocked when it doesn't keep going that fast.
And we had a good discussion just off the side where we're looking at a roof replacement, and the contractor had given maybe four different color types. This was architectural shingle and also doing flashing around the chimney and the valleys. And then you had suggested going with a neutral color, the charcoal, out of the four different choices. And you had mentioned a good reasoning to go with that is just that in case siding wants to be changed, that's a good color to stick with because it can match with any type of exterior colors as well.
Yeah, I've always liked charcoal. Some people consider the fact that the dark color will absorb more heat, but I think charcoal goes with any paint color, any siding color. So, if you're going to change the paint color in the future, you don't have to worry about matching the roof. We just finished a project here and the roof was, I think, kind of like yours. It was a kind of like a rusty brownish color. And we were going to repaint the house. And the homeowner originally, she wanted a really dark blue, but it would have looked really, really bad with that roof.
Oh,
So yeah, and she was going to sell the home. So we we helped her pick a color that went better with the roof and everything went great. It sold within a week and she got her price. So but again, she didn't even consider that either. So that's that's one way we've been able to help with decisions like that.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the whole meeting. So we'll be back next week and we'll give the highlights for the meeting coming up this Wednesday. And I was thinking with the holidays coming up, I think Wednesday lands before Thanksgiving, obviously, but I think it also lands before Christmas. So we'll have to put our feelers out and see if people think they'll want to join meetings during those times or not. I'll be available, but we'll have to see what happens then.
Yeah, please like and subscribe. We got the old guy rei@gmail.com to reach out. We got the shirt links, probably post somewhere in one of these directions. And then also Wednesdays, got the school meetings. And then we're also going through Dion's course calls every Tuesday. It's every other month that we've had great value in. Maybe one day we could have a separate video on that. And is that everything? And then also you've set up an Amazon link, and maybe we could have a separate video just to help support the meetings because you are paying for the annual subscription with Zoom. So we just figured it's a good way to try to use that link to leverage being able to pay and afford for the annual subscription for the Zoom to host the meetings every week.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And that's all stuff we're learning. We did just sign up a couple, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, to be on that Amazon program, and it looks like it's working. We've gotten a little bit of change in the account now, so that'll be going, like you said, to help pay for the annual subscription for the Zoom, so we can host the meetings. That would be awesome.
No.
Thanks for
Any way
bringing
to cash flow, any way to cash flow, we'll take it.
that. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks.